Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Yes, folks, that is the More Money theme song. Money, because we are here to help you make more money. I am your host, Steve Moore, economist. We talk about the economy. We talk about finances. We talk politics. We like to have a little bit of fun on the show. So thank you so much for joining. We have excellent ratings all over the country. So appreciate so much of you folks for carving a little bit of time out of your weekend to join me for this show. I've always said I'm not the greatest radio talk show host, but I do have the smartest audience. And I know that because oftentimes we take calls from you and I learn so much from listening to you. And if we can squeeze it in at the end of the hour, I will take a few of your calls. By the way, we are live, we are in color. And so it is wonderful to be here. As most of you know, I do this show out of the Washington, D.C. area. Yes, I am in the swamp. I have to admit it. And this weather is so horrendous. All we've had now for the last 3 days is rain, 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 rain. It's supposed to rain for the next few days. So that's driving me a little crazy because I want to be out barbecuing and swimming and playing tennis and golf. So hopefully the weather will turn because the whole Southeast is just being blanketed with the stormy weather. But look, this is Memorial Day. This is the weekend that we celebrate and honor the great Americans who gave their lives for our country. And there are literally millions of Americans over the last 250 years who have given their life for our country. So it is a great time. It is proper that we pay tribute to the amazing sacrifices these people made. And I wanted to, look, we'll get to economics in a few minutes. We've got a great show lined up, but I just want to say this, that the last couple of weeks I've been watching this show on Netflix, which is on the great battles of World War II. And folks, if you have not seen this, go to Netflix. I think you can probably get it on some of the other channels, or you can download it. These are amazing videos. Each one is about an hour of the great battles of World War II, starting with, I think it begins with Pearl Harbor, and then Midway, and then what happened on D-Day, and what happened at the Battle of the Bulge. And it's so amazing to watch these videos. The footage is incredible. And you will see that, you'll see from this that the acts of heroism were amazing. And it almost brings tears to your eyes to see what these people went through. Obviously, the people who stormed the beach of Normandy were incredibly valiant, and half of them died. Half of those men died. Many of them were 18, 19, 20 years old. Great acts of heroism. So it is so proper that we always remember that. And by the way, I have not, have you been to Normandy?
No, it's on the bucket list.
Yeah, mine too. So Connor, my assistant, has served our country in uniform. So thank you, Connor, for your service.
Hey,
but
Steve, thank you.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that everyone watches that video. And you know what? Have your kids and grandkids watch it, because this is a history that kids are not learning, and what that greatest generation did is astonishing, and it makes you want to bleed red, white, and blue. All right, so we've got a great show lined up. My first guest is going to be Byron Donalds, who is likely to be the next governor of Florida. He's one of the best congressmen in the House of Representatives. We're going to talk about all things politics and economics with Byron. First, we'll take a bit of a break, and we will be right back. This is The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is The More Money Show. Thank you so much for carving some time out of your Memorial Day weekend to listen into the show. I got on board the Byron Donalds train very early. Byron and I met probably 12, 14 years ago or so. I think we were in Naples, Florida, and I didn't know who he was, and we stuck up a conversation. I said, wow, this guy gets it. He knows what's going on in the economy. And next thing I know, he is a congressman, and he served so heroically in Congress as one of the leading voices for pro-free market policies. He is now running for the governorship of Florida, which you could say is probably like the third most important position in America, behind being, I guess, governor of president of the United States, governor of New York, and then Florida is probably the most important state other than California. So, Byron, thanks so much for joining, my friend.
It's good to be with you, Steve. By the way, it's the second most important because Florida's better than New York, and everybody knows.
Yes. Hey, well spoken as a well. By the way, our flagship station is WABC in New York, but we're reaching stations all over the country, including in the great state of Florida. Well, let's start with that, Byron. I mean, first of all, Florida has a legacy of very, very good governors. Ron DeSantis has been fantastic, as you know, and Jeb Bush was an outstanding governor. And then you had who's now the senator.
You had Rick Scott.
Rick Scott. So, those are tough acts to follow. They've done some amazing things. What would you say are your 2 or 3 highest priorities in the great state of Florida? You're seeing so many people come into the state. The one thing I hear people are sort of angry about, the insurance costs because you've got hurricanes. But what are the things that you are going to do to make Florida an even greater state?
Well, first is you maintain first principles. Law and order is going to remain a pillar of our state, common sense economic policy, in a low regulatory environment. You have to keep that stuff in place. That's the first order of business. Second order of business, you brought it up, insurance costs and property taxes. I believe there are ways where we can adjust Florida's regulatory system to still follow free market principles and actually have a more sound insurance market in Florida. Governor DeSantis did a great job with tort reform in our insurance market that has stabilized our insurance market. We're already seeing auto insurance rates are coming down very fast in Florida. We anticipate property insurance rates are going to come down as well. But it's time to look at that system and figure out the tweaks and the redesigns that are necessary to have it be even more efficient for Floridians today. And then with property taxes, I know the governor and the legislature are going to go back into special session pretty soon to see what they can accomplish. If they don't get anything done, we are going to pick up that ball and try to make sure that we either fully eliminate homestead property taxes or target real relief to seniors on fixed income and the working families in Florida who are the bedrock of our workforce. We want to make sure that they get as much relief as possible.
Well, I love that agenda. And of course, as you know, Byron, this is something you and I have talked a lot about. I'm talking to Byron Donald, who is of course the member of the House of Representatives from the sort of Naples area, Florida. You've got real leadership among all the states in school choice and letting kids go to the best schools they can possibly find, public, private, Catholic. And I was just reading a study that we placed in our hotline this week showing how well these kids are doing in the charter schools. They're outcompeting the traditional public schools. Is that something you favor? Can we continue to expand full school choice in Florida?
Yeah, we can continue to expand it, and we're going to maintain school choice. It's something that when I was in the state legislature, I fought for and wanted to see. But I think you have to take it one step further. We need to make sure that our kids, when they graduate high school, are mastering math, reading, and writing. And the second thing is for our kids who are not going to go into the college and university system, we want to make sure that they are getting the apprenticeships and the credentialing that they need to go directly into the workforce. You shouldn't have to graduate high school to then have to figure out, okay, now let me go get this certificate in order to get this job. We should be doing that in high school so that every kid has a launch pad into their career. We're going to have a major initiative around Florida to modernize our educational system to meet the demands that the industry and the economy is going to have for the future of Florida.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think that's an exceptional idea. And, look, I went to the University of Illinois. I got a degree in economics there, but not everyone needs to go to college. And, if you become, let's say, a mechanic or electrician or something, you can make more money than college graduates are making. And so all we need to do is make sure these and college isn't for everyone, and allow them to to go to those schools. Why is it that we're fully subsidizing universities for, on balance, the richer kids, but the kids who go to the trade schools maybe come from more humble families? They don't get any benefit. They don't get any scholarships.
No, it's totally true. And so, in Florida, the first wave of school choice was funded by a tax credit scholarship. My plan is to actually resurrect that corporate tax credit scholarship, but now for the purposes of vocational education, trades, and even going into the workforce. It doesn't have to be an electrician or a plumber. It could also be going into the field of a company that decides to relocate to our state. And so if you have that launch pad directly into career, whether it's a trades or any other career, all that does, Steve, it helps a kid graduate high school, begin to put food on the table and put a roof over their head, and they can begin that journey of building the Florida dream for themselves. And
I like that.
That's what we're looking at.
Well, I think my friend Gary Rabine. Do you not?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I do know
so
Gary.
Gary's story is such an amazing one. He grew up in suburban Chicago, as you know, and he was one of the few people in his graduating high school class that did not go to college. Almost everyone else did, and he tells a story about how all his classmates laughed at him and said, someday you'll be working for me. And of course, what he did was starting a little paving company, paving roads, and the next thing you know, he's growing, and now it's a multi-billion-dollar business. He's probably wealthier than all of the other members of his class combined who went to college. So there is a lot. You can build a business. Let's say you become an electrician, then guess what? You can start a company. And you can build, and you become an entrepreneur, and that's sort of what makes America great.
That absolutely is. And that's something that's available to a lot of kids. As I travel Florida and I talk to our business owners, a lot of our business owners, Steve, did not go to college.
Yeah.
Or they were there for a little bit of time and left. They got on the job. They worked it hard. They figured out how to make it a business for themselves, and they just kept building it, just like you said. And so I think the key thing in America today, our young people have to know, and also our parents, the parents of our children need to understand, there are multiple pathways to success. In Florida, we want to maintain the strong foundational elements of making sure that you're mastering mathematics, you're mastering reading and writing skills, because that's the bedrock of being able to be successful in any economy. But we want to make sure that there's those multiple pathways that exist. It's not just going to college or university. And I got a finance degree. I have a marketing degree. I'm glad I graduated from Florida State. Those degrees help me be successful in life. But it's not one size fits all. We want to make sure that our kids are prepared for the future of Florida's economy, whatever that looks like, so they're prepared to lead and keep this grand experiment known as America and Western civilization alive and well.
So one of the things that I think you and I both believe very strongly in is especially as we celebrate our nation's 250th birthday, is the idea of federalism and letting states decide policies, not having all the policies driven by the folks in Washington, D.C. And Florida is a good example, by the way, as you know, how that works for us when states can make their own decisions. One of the issues we've been working on, and I just want to get your opinion on this, that we just put out a study at Unleashed Prosperity showing that the benefits of faster approval for drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, if we could get cancer drugs and drugs for epilepsy and drugs for stroke and other things out quicker, we could save the economy, literally $1 trillion, and we could save lives. So my point of all this is that what we'd like to see is maybe states having the authority to approve these drugs, not the FDA, which sits on them for years and years. And it's cruel that people don't have access to these drugs. I'm talking about drugs that could be for people with MS or Parkinson's disease. Why not, Byron, let people have the right to choose, if they want to use these drugs, and why not let the states make these decisions?
That's actually not a bad idea. I do like it. You're correct about the FDA. Highly bureaucratic. Takes way too long. The another thing that I've been talking about with my policy team is what can Florida do to speed up the start of clinical trials. Clinical trials, no matter where you are, they are highly bureaucratic. What we want to do is looking at modernizing that regulatory system in Florida so you can actually start clinical trials more quickly and actually be able to work through that process to be able to take maybe a potential drug that can really help a lot of people to market. And so I think these are the common sense reforms that Florida is going going to lead on into the future.
Well,
it's going to be based majorly on modernizing our government and our economic systems.
Well, let's talk more about that offline, Congressman, because I think it could be a real winning issue in Florida. You know, you have an older population there, and people, you know, if they have Parkinson's, why would you deny someone a drug that could be beneficial to them? But before I know you're, and by the way, so much appreciate you taking some time off on this Memorial Day weekend to talk to us. I'm a little angry at Congress. I'm a little bit angry at some of your colleagues in the Republican House that you guys aren't doing more. I'm not talking about you personally. I'm talking about the Republican caucus. I want a pro-growth message out of Republicans. You know, people are upset about the price of things. As you know, you've been barnstorming around the state of Florida. People don't like paying $4.50 a gallon of gas. I want to see a growth message from the Republicans. Now, you guys passed that great, big, beautiful bill. But come on, let's index capital gains for inflation. Why don't we go back to pay-as-you-go budgeting? All these things that I know you believe in. Why are we moving forward with this agenda? Why are we just sitting on the ball?
My friend, I would love to do all of that, but we have this arcane system called the United States Senate. And the biggest problem we have in all of Washington is you have Senate Democrats who do not want pro-growth policies. They do not want policies that actually cut the cost. Like, I'll give you an example. Everybody wants to talk affordability. Well, let's look at housing. 30% of the cost of building a home in America today is government costs. It's government regulations and government costs. It's not the raw materials. If you want to talk about what it takes to require the raw materials, we have built a federal regulatory behemoth that increased the cost on us of getting raw materials. We're cutting our nose off to spite our face. And when you try to make these changes, Democrats say no in the Senate because of the Senate filibuster.
Well, the good thing is when you're a governor, you can help trim those regulations in Florida, because you're right, a lot of the excess cost is regulation. Hey, Byron, anything I can do to help you, let me know, because you will be an outstanding governor. You will be the next governor of Florida, and thanks so much for joining us. This is the More Money Show, folks, and we will be back in 2 minutes.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thank you so much for joining. I'm economist Steve Moore. It's the highlight of my week. I hope it's the highlight of your week to be able to be in front of this microphone and talk to you about the issues that matter regarding your money and how to make more money, and a little bit of finance, a lot of bit of politics. And so thanks for joining this afternoon, or many people joining different times of the weekend, because we have affiliates from coast to coast, from north to south. It's just amazing. And so thank you for making this show a success by listening. I will have some time at the end of the hour to take a few calls, because we are live, we're in color. And if you want to, here's what I'd like to do. Because this is Memorial Day weekend, Mr. Producer, let's take a couple of calls at the end of the show from people who have served in the uniform. Maybe we have some Vietnam vets. Maybe we even have some World War II vets. There are still World War II vets out there. And that number to call in, of course, is 1-800-848-9222. And we'll try to get in a few. But we only want to hear from veterans who have stories about the heroism that they saw on the battlefield. And for those who have served, I salute you. But we have right now on the line a good friend of mine personally and a good friend of the show. We have him on regularly because he's one of the smartest political minds I know, Tom Del Beccaro. Tom, are you on with us?
I am. Thanks so much for having me on, and thank you to all the veterans.
Yes, we do.
Yes,
if
can
not,
you hear me?
let me.
He's right here.
Well,
go.
Are you there, Tom?
One more check.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there you are, Tom. I thought I'd lost you, my friend. So thank you so much for joining. Tom Del Beccaro, as I was just saying, is one of the smartest political minds I know, especially when it comes to the politics of our largest state, California. And obviously, this is a New York-based show, but there's a lot of interest, Tom, as you know, about what's going on the left coast. And so let us start with Governor Gavin Newsom. We've talked about him in recent weeks. He is all over the country now. He's gone national. He certainly looks like he is all in on a presidential race for 2028. But let's start with this little spat that he's having with Chevron. I don't know if you're following this, but Chevron now has signs about the high gas prices. And Chevron says, if you're mad about, they have signs in front of their service stations. If you're mad about the high prices, $6.50 a gallon in California, blame the politicians in Sacramento. Is that a fair ad?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the prices in California, they are gas prices anywhere from $2 to $3 more expensive in California than in Arizona, right across the border, or Iowa, or just about anywhere else. And California has a lot of regulatory taxes and straight up taxes that they apply to a gallon of gasoline. They fund in quote environmental programs. Now you can fit anything under that guise, right? And this has been going on for years. And remember, Steve, and I know you know this well, they were proud of the fact that and said that from an economic point of view, these high taxes would reduce people's use of fossil fuels. This was their program.
Right?
Yeah, this was their program to get, by raising taxes. This is the only time they believe in economics, by the way, that by raising gas taxes, people would use them less.
Yeah, and so this was sort of a war against the car too. It's not just a war against fossil fuels. They want everybody on transit, and they were going to they're going to have the train that was going to take people from Los Angeles to San Francisco. That never happened. So it just seems like it's a transportation fiasco. But when you're paying $1.50 to $2 a gallon more than the rest of the country, I mean, Houston, you've got a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. But now they deny that this is a part of the affordability crisis. And they try and push this latest increase on Trump. Yes, it's true. The supply has resulted in higher prices, the Iran war. But as even some Democrat politicians, Antonio Villaraigosa said, blaming this all on Trump is disingenuous. This existed before. But the problem here, Steve, as you know, is the one lopsided media in California until the California Post came along they've gotten away with always blaming things on Trump because there wasn't a voice of sanity on the other side.
Yeah, it was almost like the old Soviet Union. You couldn't get any accurate facts about what was happening with the economy. So what about this, though, Tom? I mean, here you've got a governor of a state that is attacking the businesses in this state, saying, don't go to that business because they're attacking me. I mean, that just seems so incredibly inappropriate. It's like saying, telling people, don't vote for it. Don't go to any store that doesn't support me for governor.
Yeah, it is. It's a desperate move. Yeah. I think he peaked early, Gavin Newsom, and then people started to look under the hood of his policies and his ineffective management style. And so he's kind of desperate. He will declare in December for the presidency.
Yes.
Right after the midterms. But he's gonna, as he's got critics on his own side, so it's not going to be a coronation of him. It's going to be a fight, and there'll be many Democrats in that race. But as Stephen A. Smith says, your record is going to be on trial.
Yeah.
And
well, let's hope so. Let's hope. Okay, so let's shift now to the other big race out in California that Americans all over the country are now paying attention to. And by the way, we're going to have to take a quick break, but we'll hold you over if we could, Tom. But just give us your initial reaction to this crazy race for mayor in Los Angeles, where you have Karen Bass. We call her Karen Let It Burn Bass versus Spencer Pratt, and just give us we've only got about a minute and a half till we take a break. What's your kind of initial thoughts on that race?
Well, LA is that bad, and no prominent Republican would get in the race. No establishment of Republican would get in the race. And so Spencer Pratt, who had nothing to lose and who has media savvy, is having the time of his life.
Yeah.
And he's doing what a prominent Republican wouldn't do, which is being very common sense, calling it out for what it is.
Yep.
And I hate to use this.
He's
analogy,
catching on.
But he's caught fire.
Yeah.
And he's having a good time and showing what a populist, common sense candidate can do.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break, folks. By the way, this is the More Money Show. When we get back, I'll finish because I've got a bunch of other questions I want to ask Tom about. And we will also be taking your calls, 1-800-848-9222. If you are a veteran, please call in. We want to hear your stories about this Memorial Day. And so we'd love to hear from you. 1-800-848-9222. We'll be right back, folks. This is the More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Show. Thank you so much for joining on this Memorial Day weekend. I want to take a couple calls at the end of the hour from some of our veterans to tell us about their experience and the acts of heroism that they saw on the battlefield. So please call in. I think we have one line open, 1-800-848-9222 if you wore the uniform, and you can tell us some stories that will make us proud as Americans. But I have a few remaining minutes with my good friend, Tom Del Beccaro. By the way, I didn't give a full introduction to him before. Tom actually was the head of the Republican Party in California for many years. He also is the author of a book called The Divided Era. And by the way, are we ever living in an era, a divided era right now? You called that one, Tom. Look, we have the mayors of our great cities. You've got Mondani running New York City into the ground. You've got Brandon Johnson, who's the mayor of my hometown, Chicago, driving that city into the ground. You have Karen Bass, who's been an absolutely awful governor of Los Angeles. You've got this moron who is now the mayor of Seattle, who's saying, "Oh, bye-bye. We were just very happy to see all these businesses leave." Tom, what's going on here? I mean, how can we keep electing? I love America's great cities, and they're being ruined by these left-wing, progressive, high-tax policies.
Yeah, over a year ago, I wrote a piece in Fox saying that the mayors of Chicago, L.A., and New York would define the Democrat Party because that's what they're doing.
And they do. They are defining the party. You're right. You were right.
What people don't understand is it turns out that being mayor is a very difficult job. You have to have excellent managerial skills to do it.
Exactly. Yep.
And Mondami and all these people don't have any managerial skills. So forget just the policy issues or the ideology.
Right.
You got to have management skills to be president, mayor, and governor. Yeah. And one of the reasons, Steve, that the Democrats have such a weak bench is because A, they elect people without these managerial skills, Spamberger. B, they elect all these ideological people, but when you put these things in practice, the policies fail, so they don't have anybody to lift up to be like a DeSantis who has both managerial skills, it turns out, and good policies. So that's why they have these weak benches. But at the end of the day, the voter registration numbers in LA are 3-1 Democrat.
Yeah, I know.
But when you watch these campaigns, Steve, they don't campaign on the issues. They campaign against Trump. And while it is the economy stupid for independents and Republicans, for many Democrats today, Steve, I would say a majority of Democrats, they don't vote on the economy or the issues anymore. They just vote against. And that's a problem.
And it's sad. It's sad. It's sad, Tom, because they're ruining their own cities. I mean, when I grew up in Chicago, as you know, people know from their history books, our mayor, we call him Mayor for Life, was Richard M. Daley. Now, he was a Democrat. He was a little corrupt. There was no question. There was a lot of peyote going on. But, the city worked. It worked. Yeah. And so that kind of Democrat doesn't really exist anymore. You're right, because they're just ideologues that many of them couldn't put a 2-car parade together. And it's not just a bad ideology, it's incompetence.
Yes. Yes, it's very. Think about New York is one of them. Other than the federal government, is probably the most sophisticated bureaucracy in the United States today. And yet, this kid who's never run a lemonade stand is suddenly put in charge of it. And so of course he's gonna fail. And Spanberger, totally ideologically person, not someone who can manage. So that's the problem. The left creates these and supports these huge bureaucracies and has no one to run them, and we pay for that. Literally, as Thomas Sowell says, the worst thing you can do is put people in charge of things where there's no accountability, and that's where America is in many ways.
So, Tom, just on the way out, we got 1 minute left. How do you see this election playing out in California? Do you think that we could see any kind of change in leadership in Los Angeles or even in the governorship of California?
Well, these huge voter registration advantages, you and I have talked over the last 15 years about how it's being hollowed out. But the fight has to start somewhere. Yes. And Spencer Pratt is proving that you can make a difference and open up people's eyes. And that's the first major step. So that's being advanced. Voters are upset. They see what's wrong. And that's where we got to start. And we got to get voter ID passed in California, which I think can. And that will be a strong foundation to start the renewal. Well put. And, I was in New York when Rudy Giuliani became mayor, and he turned that city around in 14 months. It was amazing what good leadership could do. So we can do much, much better for our cities with great leadership. We just don't have it right now. Tom Del Beccaro, thanks so much for joining, my friend. All right. Let's see. I'd like to take some. Do we have any callers yet, Mr. Producer, who are no vets? Come on, guys. 1-800-848-9222. But my friend Connor, you've got a story about great heroism. You wore the uniform. Tell us about your Civil War story.
Well, thank you. Yes, Steve. Yes, I do not live up to the bravery these men showed. But one story that inspired me when I did face some tough times, working with civilians in tough places in the Army, I thought about the men of the 20th Maine. And during the Civil War, which talk about a divided era, they were holding the line. They were holding the leftmost flank of the Union Army at Gettysburg. And Lee was on the offensive. He had kicked the Union's butts on day one, to put it mildly. And he had a good chance of leading the Confederate Army to victory. And it was down to these guys, 358 men. Wow. And here we are, Memorial Day. We have to recognize that they lost 10% who died. Another 30% were wounded. So they were down to, by almost half.
Either died or
almost half, yeah. Yep. And the gentleman who was leading this defense, Joshua Chamberlain, he was a colonel. He wasn't commanding the whole battle, but he saw this picture, and they were down to, their last bits of ammo. They were out of ammo. They'd held off so many charges. And they say, one more charge, we can't fight them off. They're just going to shoot us all. So he said, let's fix bayonets. And back then, bayonets were, starting to go out of fashion. We were getting close to the invention of the machine gun. The Gatling gun was coming around. This would be like going into Iran today and saying, well, we're out of planes. Let's get in the F-4 Phantoms from the Vietnam era. Yeah, we can do it, but will it work? And the men looked at him and said, yeah, this is our only option. And Joshua Chamberlain and all the other men knew, if we're so exhausted and out of ammo, they got to be close to that too. So they fixed bayonets and they charged down the hill, and they threw off that surprise attack Lee had planned. And while Pickett's charge is better known, the reason Lee had to attempt that was because of the bravery and sacrifice these men showed on day two. Day three was won because of the bravery they put in on and sacrifice on day two.
Like that. Just in our final minutes of the show, my favorite story, I started the show by recommending to people to watch the amazing battles of World War II on the series that's in color. It's been colorized. It's amazing footage and amazing heroic stories of those great battles, everything that happened from Pearl Harbor through D-Day through Midway. And Midway, of course, was the decisive battle in the Pacific Ocean. It turned the tide of that war against the Japanese. And the story that they tell from firsthand from some of these pilots, that back then we did not have radar systems that were very accurate. And so they're flying out way out in the Pacific Ocean, trying to find the Japanese fleet, and they can't find it. And they're looking all over, the wide ocean, miles and miles of hundreds of miles of ocean. And the carriers say, turn back, you're out of gas, you've got to turn back. And they didn't turn back. And they saw just the story. This is a firsthand story. One of the pilots said, we saw a reflection from the sun that they couldn't quite figure out what it was. Something like was the metal. And it turned out that was where the fleet was. It was almost an act of God that they found it. They came in, they bombed the crap out of the Japanese fleet, but only half of those pilots ever made it back. So, those are the kind of stories that make you proud to be American. They're the kind of stories that bring tears to your eyes when you think about that kind of heroism. Many of them just crashed into the ocean because they did run out of gas, but they helped us win the war. And so that's why we're Americans, and that's why we celebrate Memorial Day. I hope you all have a really happy and holy Memorial Day. I am going to try to head out to the ceremony that the President Trump will be presiding over in Washington, D.C. And I hope that you all remember this, though, that there's so many things that make America great: our entrepreneurial spirit, our free markets, but it's also the people who preserve our freedom. So have a great, great Memorial Day. We'll be back, by the way, next week. Same bat time, same bat channel on The More Money Show.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?